From the highest towers of the obsidian keep, she could see the entire kingdom of Velarith glowing faintly under the pale moon. Thousands of lanterns lined the streets like fallen stars. It was the night of the winter solstice ball, the night the nobles gathered to honor the kingdom's eternal dusk. The castle shimmered with life. Servants rushed through marble corridors carrying trays of golden fruit and crystal wine. Musicians tuned their silver instruments, and the scent of burning incense filled the air. Inside her small chamber, Leora stood in front of a mirror, uncertain of her reflection. The servants had dressed her in a gown of deep violet silk that shimmered with hints of black. It fit her perfectly, though she could not remember ever being measured. Around her wrist, the faint red mark glowed like a hidden ember. Her dark hair had been braided with silver threads, and a thin mask of crystal rested against her face. Delicate, like frost, she hardly recognized herself. When the door opened, Lord Arendor entered. His presence filled the room like cold wind. He wore black armor traced with gold, and a cloak that moved as if it were made of shadows. For a moment he said nothing, only watched her. His expression was unreadable, but something flickered in his eyes. "You look presentable," he said at last. His voice was calm but softer than usual. Leora bowed her head. "Thank you, my lord." He stepped closer and she felt her pulse quicken. "Remember what you must do," he said. "You will stay near me. Speak only when spoken to. Smile when I look at you. The nobles must believe we are bound by affection." "Yes, my lord." He studied her face for a moment longer, then extended his arm. "Shall we?" She hesitated, then placed her hand on his. His skin was cold but steady. The mark on her wrist warmed faintly, as though reacting to his touch. Together, they walked through the long halls toward the ballroom. As they approached, the sound of laughter and music grew stronger. When the grand doors opened, a wave of golden light flooded over them. The nobles turned to look. Whispers rose immediately. "The Lord has brought someone." "Who is she?" "She's not one of us." But when Arendor's sharp gaze swept across the room, silence followed. No one dared question him aloud. He led Leora down the marble steps, his hand steady on hers. To the eyes of the court, they were a perfect picture, the immortal lord and his mysterious beloved. Leora tried to stay calm, though her heart raced. She could feel every stare, every whisper. She had never been part of this glittering world, a world filled with masks and lies. Arendor leaned close, his voice low. "Do not be afraid. They cannot harm you while I stand beside you." His words were meant to reassure her, but the warmth in them startled her more than the coldness of his earlier tone. The music began again, and couples took the floor. A noblewoman with jeweled hair approached Arendor and curtsied. "My lord," she said sweetly, "it pleases us to see you here." "We feared solitude had become your only companion." Arendor smiled faintly. "Not solitude, Lady Miren. I have chosen companionship, at last." He turned to Leora, his expression almost gentle. "May I have this dance?" The room went silent again. Leora swallowed hard. "If it pleases you, my lord." He led her into the center of the floor. The music softened and the two began to move. Arendor's steps were smooth and commanding, guiding her easily through the rhythm. Leora tried to follow without trembling, though her heart pounded wildly. Every gaze in the ballroom was fixed upon them. Every motion felt like a test, but as the dance continued, something changed. For a moment, she forgot the eyes watching them. The music seemed to fade into something slower, deeper, a melody only they could hear. Arendor looked at her, truly looked, and in that moment, Leora saw something strange behind his calm mask. Pain. Not anger, not cruelty, but the pain of someone who had lost everything long ago. It made her chest ache. When the dance ended, applause echoed around them. Arendor bowed his head slightly, his hand still holding hers. For a second, she felt warmth. Then he released her, and the air grew cold again. As the guests turned to mingle, Arendor's advisor, Lord Kale, approached. He was tall, with eyes like polished steel. "My lord," Kyle said quietly, Some of the council doubt your choice. They whisper that the girl is no noble, that she is unfit to stand beside you. Arendor's gaze hardened. Let them whisper. Their tongues are small weapons. Kyle hesitated. And if they question the truth of your bond? Arendor's expression darkened. Then I will show them. He turned to Leora and said loud enough for the nobles to hear, My beloved, walk with me. The title startled her. Yes, my lord. He led her away from the crowd, through a long corridor lined with black glass mirrors. The music faded behind them. The corridor was quiet except for their footsteps. Arendor stopped before a tall mirror, his reflection faint and pale. Do you know why I told you never to enter the West Wing? He asked. Leora shook her head. No, my lord. He looked at the mirror, his voice heavy. Because the West Wing is where the curse lives. Before she could ask, his hand brushed the glass, and it rippled like water. For a brief second, she saw another figure in the reflection. A woman who looked exactly like her, dressed in silver and crowned with thorns. Leora stepped back in shock. Who is that? Arendor's jaw tightened. She was my beloved, a long time ago. She defied the curse, and it took her. Leora's breath caught. The curse? He turned to her, eyes burning faintly. Every soul that loves me is claimed by the darkness that keeps me immortal. I cannot die, but neither can I love. It is the punishment for the sin I once committed. What sin? She whispered. I destroyed the light that once ruled this land, he said quietly. To protect my kingdom, I bound myself to the shadows. But in doing so, I condemned my heart to silence. Leora's chest ached. And now you bring me here to pretend to love you, even though it could awaken that curse again? He looked away. It was necessary. I thought you were ordinary, untouched by fate. But now, his gaze drifted to her wrist. The mark glowed faintly, pulsing like a living ember. Leora held her wrist close to her chest. It burns when you're near. That is because the curse recognizes you, he said softly. It should not. You are not supposed to carry its mark. She took a shaky breath. Then what am I, my lord? Arendor did not answer. His silence was heavier than any word. Suddenly a noise echoed from the ballroom, a shattering sound followed by screams. Arendor turned sharply. Stay here. He moved swiftly down the corridor, his cloak sweeping behind him. But Leora, heart pounding, followed despite his command. When she reached the edge of the ballroom, she froze. The lights had dimmed, and the air was filled with black smoke. A nobleman stood at the center, his eyes blank and his body trembling. Dark symbols crawled across his skin. The musicians fled as the man screamed, his voice twisted and broken. Then he fell silent and collapsed into ashes. The room went deathly quiet. Arendor stood before the remains, his expression grim. The curse has awakened, he said, his gaze turned toward Leora. And it has chosen its vessel. Leora's heart stopped. The red mark on her wrist flared painfully bright, and she fell to her knees as heat spread through her veins. Her vision blurred, and the last thing she saw was Arendor running toward her, his voice echoing through the fading world. Leora, stay with me. Then everything went dark. In the ancient kingdom of Velorith, night never truly ended. The skies stayed dim and violet, as if the sun had forgotten this land long ago. People said the moon had been cursed by the first king's pride, and ever since, the kingdom lived under its pale, cold gaze. At the heart of this eternal dusk stood the Obsidian Keep, a fortress made of black stone that seemed to drink light rather than reflect it. Within those towering walls lived Lord Arendor, ruler of Velorith, a man both feared and admired. His voice could quiet storms, and his gaze could freeze the heart of any traitor. Yet for all his power, no one had seen him smile in 100 years. He was said to be immortal, though no one dared to ask how or why. Some whispered that his heart was bound to a curse. Others believed he had made a bargain with death itself. Whatever the truth, his presence carried a silence that no music could break. In the lower chambers of the keep, far from the noble halls, worked Leora, a quiet scribe who kept the royal records. She spent her days surrounded by scrolls, candles, and the smell of dust. Her hands were often stained with ink, and her voice was rarely heard. She was ordinary, or so everyone believed. But she had one gift. She remembered everything she read. Her memory was like a mirror, clear and unbroken. That small talent had saved her life many times. In Velareth, mistakes were punished harshly, and secrets were deadly. One evening, as the moon rose high and pale, a messenger appeared at the door of the archives. He wore a cloak lined with silver and carried the mark of the royal crest. "Leora of the lower halls," he said. "The Lord commands your presence." Leora froze. Her heart skipped a beat. No scribe had ever been summoned by the Lord himself. When she finally followed the messenger through the halls, the sound of her footsteps echoed like whispers. The corridors of the keep were cold and endless. Torches flickered along the walls, their flames bending as if they feared something unseen. At last, the doors of the throne hall opened. The chamber was vast and silent. Moonlight spilled through tall glass windows, painting the marble floor in silver lines. And there, sitting upon a dark throne carved from obsidian, was Lord Arendor himself. He was taller than any man she had ever seen, dressed in black trimmed with faint gold. His hair was like ink, and his eyes, cold, sharp, and endless, glowed faintly, as if lit from within. When he looked at her, she felt as though her soul had been weighed and found trembling. "Come closer," his voice commanded, deep and calm. Leora obeyed, each step careful. She bowed low. "My lord," she whispered. He studied her quietly. "You are the scribe who works in the Eastern Archives?" "Yes, my lord." "I have read your records," he said. "Flawless work." "You do not forget," her chest tightened. "It is my duty to remember, my lord." He leaned back in his throne, eyes never leaving her. "Good. Then you shall remember this as well." A strange smile touched his lips, not kind, but not cruel either. "You are to become my beloved," Leora froze. What, my lord?" "My beloved," he repeated, his tone smooth, almost bored. "Starting tonight, you will appear by my side. Speak softly, smile when spoken to, and look as though you have loved me all your life." Her breath caught. I don't understand." He rose slowly from the throne. The movement was graceful, but the air around him seemed to darken. "You need not understand. Only obey." Leora's voice shook. "May I ask why?" Arendor stopped before her, his shadow falling across her like a living thing. "The council grows restless," he said. "They whisper that I am not human, that I cannot love. If they believe it, they will rise against me. I need a mask to keep their loyalty, and you will be that mask." She stared at him, unable to speak. "But, my lord, I am no noblewoman." "I am only a scribe—" "Precisely," he interrupted, his tone cool. "You are simple, forgettable, and loyal. No one will suspect deception from you." Leora lowered her eyes. "And if I refuse?" The silence that followed was sharp as glass. Arendor's voice dropped, low and final. "Then you will be exiled from Velareth by dawn. The archives will burn your name, and your home will not remember you." The words felt like a blade against her heart. Velareth was cruel, but it was all she had. If she left, she would have nothing. No roof, no food, no safety. After a long pause, she whispered, "Then, I accept, my lord." Arendor's gaze softened, just for a heartbeat. "Good." He stepped closer, lifting his hand. His fingers brushed the back of her palm. The touch was cold, colder than winter. But the instant their skin met, a faint red mark burned across her wrist, shaped like a curling flame. She gasped in pain. What is this?" "A sign," he said quietly. "It will remind you of your promise, and it will remind me that I have bound you to my will." Leora pressed her hand to her chest, trying to steady her breath. The mark glowed faintly, then faded into her skin. She could still feel its warmth. Arendor turned away and walked toward the window. "Tomorrow night the nobles will gather for the winter solstice ball. You will stand beside me as my chosen. Wear something fitting. The servants will bring it." He looked over his shoulder, his eyes like dark fire. "Do not disappoint me, Leora of the lower halls." She bowed shakily. "Yes, my lord." As she left the hall, her knees trembled. Every step felt heavy, every breath uncertain. What had she just agreed to? Outside, the wind howled through the stone corridors. Somewhere far above, the moon flickered behind clouds, casting shadows that moved like restless spirits. When Leora returned to her small chamber, she sank onto her bed, staring at her marked wrist. It pulsed faintly, like a heartbeat that wasn't her own. She whispered to herself, "Pretend to be his beloved. Or be exiled," her voice cracked. "I really don't want to lose my place." But the words offered no comfort. She could feel something inside her, something strange, shifting, as though the mark had awakened a piece of her that did not belong to this world. That night, sleep did not come easily. In her dreams, she stood in a field of black roses. A shadow stood behind her, whispering her name, soft and sorrowful. When she turned, she saw Arendor's eyes, glowing faintly, filled not with cruelty but with endless loneliness. When she woke, the first light of dawn touched her window. For the first time in years, a streak of gold sunlight pierced through the clouds. Leora sat up, heart pounding. The kingdom of Velorith had not seen sunlight in centuries, and somewhere in the castle, the immortal lord felt warmth on his face, a warmth he had forgotten long ago. He touched his chest where his heart should have been silent. But it beat once, faint and unsteady. The curse, dormant for 100 years, stirred. And though Leora did not know it yet, the moment she agreed to pretend, she became the key to the curse that chained his soul.